This is Zarcilla, director of Raging Grace, a British film about an undocumented Filipino domestic worker.
How long have I been sleeping?
The film won both Best Directorial Debut and Best Narrative Feature at South by Southwest, which is a renowned film festival. Despite its accolades, it wasn't warmly welcomed upon its release back in the UK. Being a film the first of its kind, it's a uniquely Filipino-British story.
Joy, what is that smell?
Oh, I'm making lunch.
Yes, but what is it?
Chicken adobo.
Chicken and what?
Adobo.
Oh, no.
The film have put a very refreshing take on the struggles of migrant workers in the UK.
I love when representation tells our stories more than just like, oh, this is like a Filipino face.
I feel very proud that we have a Filipino movie like that, and it talks about working, in this hostile environment.
I really did make this film for us, the Filipino community, the marginalized community, anybody that's ever felt like they've been pushed to the margins, where your voices have gone unheard, unfelt, unseen.
For me as a British Filipino, it perhaps gave me the feeling of representation on screen for the first time in my life. Do you remember how we first met?
Yes, I do actually. I think I was walking down Roman Road and I just pointed at you. I said, I don't know who you are, or something like that. It's like, are you Ray? It's like, yeah. It's like, oh, cool. I've just seen some of your videos. And I don't know how long ago that was.
That was peak lockdown.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. I was in a really disheveled state. I probably had long hair, which at one point I attempted to cut myself.
It's okay, I didn't know.
So I was in a state where I did not want to be seen. And I distinctly remember looking up at you before you interacted with me and thinking, wow, that's a cool looking potentially Filipino guy. But little did I know, was I speaking to an award-winning director.
Oh my goodness. Not at that time.
A talented Filipino director.
Ray, stop it. You're making me blush.
Was there a film that made you want to make films?
No. I think it was like a bunch of films.
Right.
Like it was the experience of what watching films was to me as a kid that I think got me excited about films. But I think films for me, I didn't ever think I could actually make them, because I was left alone in the house a lot just due to my mum and dad's type of work, and there was like a whole like shelves of VHSs, and that's places where I found like my on-screen mum and dad, my siblings, and it's a great way to be able to escape. So I think it was just being around that kind of magic was something I wanted to be able to recreate. So I don't think there was really one particular thing. But I would say, if Eternal Sunshine of Spotless Mind,
oh really,
and Lost in Translation,
those
two films back to back. Yeah.
Wow. Would you say those were the films which kind of showed you the power of what filmmaking could do?
Yeah, and they were so different, and they were one just felt like so well made with craft, type of like intimidating mastery of craft through Michel Gondry. And then the other one was just like this really beautiful dual protagonist character piece that felt so like weirdly nostalgic to watch, even though you're watching it in present time.
Yeah.
And it was such a comfort film for me. I was like, I want to be able to do something.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Those were two of I'd put them in my top 5 films which made me want to become a filmmaker.
Whoa.
Yeah. Eternal Sunshine especially, that was a film which at the time of me watching, I was about maybe 13. I didn't fully get it at the time, but I felt a lot of things just from the nuances, how memories were portrayed on screen. That's very. I was expecting you to say something different for some reason. But...
No, like my favorite film. One of them is like Matilda. Like Danny
really?
DeVito's. Yes, it's a fucking masterpiece. It's like literally a masterclass in like tension building and like how to tell a story that's still dramatically powerful while still being lighthearted and funny.
Yeah.
And having like incredible thriller moments in it.
I recall the shot where she's under the table like that.
Dude.
Yeah. I can definitely see what you're saying.
That whole segment, that whole sequence, like really inspired part of Raging Grace.
Yeah.
Like,
wow, I can see that.
Yeah, it's so well done. Rewatch it. It is a masterclass in tension building.
Wow.
Seriously.
Danny DeVito's Matilda.
Yeah. Don't sleep on it.
How did you get started in directing?
My brother had like a DV cam, which I used to not ask to borrow, and but I would like make magic tricks on it. So like filming me in one spot, clicking my fingers, cutting it, and then like rewinding it a bit, and then re-recording it with me out of the frame.
Wow.
And I would show my aunties and they'd be like, how did you do that? I was like, cool, right?
You were a British Filipino, the Mia brothers, both of them in one small Filipino boy.
I was making like short films, but I left it all for like animation.
Oh really?
Yeah. I was like still really obsessed with like drawing and like illustration, and I wanted to be able to make those things come to life. But once I graduated, which was probably one of the worst years you could possibly graduate, because of the financial crash,
right.
There weren't really many jobs around. And when I did get into that field, you had to sit in a dark room where literally the windows were mask taped shut. And you spent like 16 hours in there. I was like, no, I can't. I cannot spend my life like this. And yeah, I remembered how much I loved film. Started with a, I don't know if you know this, but there was a channel called SBTV back in the day.
A YouTube channel.
Yeah, it was a YouTube channel, like with Jamal Edwards.
Yes.
Jamal Edwards. Yeah, I was like shooting stuff for that, making music videos. Became the creative director of SBTV, helped shape a lot of its visual like identity.
Yeah.
But that was really hard. You don't make any money with music videos. But it's like a baptism of fire for like film school. And I just felt like it was a really great place for me to like practice putting my imagination onto film or digital and telling stories in like 3 minutes.
Wow.
But you can't make music videos forever on those fucking budgets. So I moved to commercials, and all in all I did that for about 7 years until I literally felt like I had created myself a prison of doing stuff that I thought I just had to do because, you know, it looked cool. I was earning money, but I felt like you were often the last to be thanked, first one to be blamed. I was sick of giving my best ideas to like companies who didn't give a shit about me. Yeah. And then I left, which was really hard because I went from earning money to making no money. But they say write what you know. I wrote a short film called Pommel, which is about 2 young brothers who are pitted against each other in an up-and-coming gymnastics competition. It's like a short thriller drama, and it was based on a relationship between me and my brother when we did gymnastics when we were younger. And yeah, that was like my first entry into like doing something properly dramatic, and went on the festival circuit, got got onto the Biffers for best British short. And yeah, that's kind of like the start of it all.
So your latest film, Raging Grace,
Oui.
it's your debut feature, and it's about a migrant Filipino domestic worker in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about?
Back in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
an extraordinarily chaotic year for so many reasons. That one of it being the pandemic, gave me a lot of time to think about what I was doing with my life, and basically realized I was doing everything for all the wrong reasons. I think I basically had an identity crisis. I didn't know who I was, and it made me think about like my childhood and my own, like, who the fuck am I? And coming to the realization that I had spent so much of my life rejecting my own heritage, my own mother tongue, my culture, and socially contorting myself to fit into the definitions of what it is to be like a good immigrant, like a model minority. Which brought me like enormous shame. And this shame and pain was compounded by, you know, a very open aggression towards East and Southeast Asians in the US and the UK. And that aggression was being stoked by a piece of shit government who had very toxic rhetoric towards immigrants. And it was towards the very kinds of immigrants who were supporting, you know, an underfunded and an overwhelmed national health system. And on the front lines were Filipino nurses and doctors who were dying.
Yeah.
And my own mum had to come out of retirement to help. And
what was she?
So she was like a care nurse. And I just thought it was so insane that someone like my mum, who was already retired, who had been a cleaner and a worker, a domestic worker for a lot of middle class families, where she's been treated horrendously, was coming out to risk her life for the British public and for a government who didn't give a shit. And honestly, that just, it made me so mad, like the maddest I've ever felt in my life, I think. And I knew that putting this onto page was the safest place for me to be able to express a lot of that rage that I knew that I hadn't allowed myself to feel. And that was like the birth of Raging Grace. Pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah. But you hold that kind of rage for that long, and it's heavy as fuck.
Yeah.
It begins to corrode at the core of your being. And I knew that as important as it was to be able to express a lot of that, I needed to do more with it. I needed to be able to find a way beyond the rage. You know, I often say that rage, it lacks so much nuance. It strips any context or, you know, meaning or understanding, because it's just so reactionary. And I wanted to bring meaning to it. And like Raging Grace was a way for me to bring nuance, you know, to a lot of experiences that we didn't really have the language around. And sometimes words don't do that. Pictures are fucking powerful in that way, where you can, you know, when you put one frame in front of the other, you begin to craft a narrative that speaks to a lived experience. And I wanted to create something that allowed us as a community to start feeling a level of joy and celebration for who we are in our culture. Yeah.
Because for me, watching the film, like I think in recent years, to put it widely, like as migrant Asians, not just Filipinos, we've had quite a few on-screen things that have led us to celebrate. Uh, like we have an Asian American in Marvel now, and with Everything Everywhere All at Once, and there are all of these Western Asian stories being put out there and heard. Although there's a lot that we can relate to, there's not a lot of Filipino stories out there still, and in particular British Filipino. That's just something that I've never seen on screen, represented with all of its nuances. They say you don't know how underrepresented you truly are in media until you experience being represented. And I kind of had that moment in the cinema where I was just like, oh my God, I saw so much of myself in the film, in both joy and grace, but also the experiences that my mother went through. Just just the amount of racism that I've witnessed my whole life, how to go through, and you do it in such a nuanced way. So yeah, I just wanted to take a moment just to acknowledge how important this film is, and yeah, well done,
dude. This film is for you. It is. It was made with the intention for anybody who has gone through those types of experiences but never really had the outlet or the language to be able to really kind of express that hurt or that level of anger and frustration. I wanted to make a cathartic spectacle.
Yeah.
And not just for the Filipino community, but for other marginalized communities that I know understand the universality of what it is to want to belong but feel rejected, feel antagonized but also unable to respond. And we as migrants, immigrants, children of the diaspora, we supposedly live in a post-colonial society, but we don't.
No, the mindset is still very much there.
Yeah, and it's a dangerous mindset that is invisible. Like you don't even know you're under the influence of a colonial mindset. And that was a really painful realization for me, like to know that I was doing so much of the work that colonizers had wanted, and to undo that has been maybe it's been a really painful process, because you realize how much you are responsible for a lot of it. And writing this film feels like it was a dismantling of my old self, to try and write something like authentic, like literally having to dismantle your own master's house within you, to build something like new, fresh, with a stronger foundation that is rooted in, truth, culture, our culture. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because like you don't know until you're represented, until you see yourself on screen.
Yeah.
So much of like feeling represented is borrowed from other adjacent cultures to us, and it makes it really confusing.
Yeah.
You feel like you want to belong to another culture because that's the closest thing you have. And is important, I think, as like a filmmaker who's Filipino-British, to make something that feels like we can celebrate, Yeah, man. But it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really fucking hard.
Especially when you're one of the first to put your voice out there.
Oh, dude, I really didn't want to be either. I was like dying for someone else. Like, please, someone someone do this, because like being the first like comes with enormous amount of difficulties.
Yeah.
Having to build inroads is like
Just dealing with all of that pressure on you.
yeah. At first I was like, this is not a responsibility I want.
Yeah.
But you quickly realize it's like, dude, this is a responsibility you will have whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't accept this, you're just going to continue to perpetuate what it is to be, you know, another voice for the establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got those already. Just look to our leadership of government. They look like us, but the shit they spout is like of the white patriarchy. It is of British colonialism. It is of racism, and it's perfect. It's, you know, to really fuck up the narrative and the progress that we're making. So, you know, this is a film that is a direct rebellion, like, to so much of what we have not been allowed to say and do. And I really hope it helps to spark, like, not just conversations, but like the fire within us that I know we were born with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we fucking came from warrior people, Ray.
Yeah. Maharlika.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it took 350 years to fucking quell that fire. And you know, it may have been reduced to embers, but it just needs to be blown on for that fire to spark up again. And I've been saying this at so many talks. You know, colonialism came to our country with fire and tried to burn away our culture, our heritage, our mother tongue. But bro, you cannot fucking burn what was always aflame. And that is us. That's us. And we have to remember that. We really do. We have to remember what we inherently have. And we have to own it and celebrate it.
This film achieved what I would consider as a major flex, and correct me if I'm wrong. This film won, was it best directorial debut at South by Southwest Film Festival, as well as best narrative feature.
Yeah.
That I just think, you know, what a flex.
Oh, thanks, man.
You went in, won best directorial debut, which is incredible, and best feature. You came in and changed the game, won the best award, came back to your filming location of the UK. And obviously this is a film which does not portray the UK, and more specifically its colonial past, in the best light. So, whereas American audiences took to this film quite well, I'd imagine. But
yeah.
How did the British react?
Certainly not with the same enthusiasm, that's for sure. I think it's been like really slow, and honestly quite painful. Like, you know, I really respected the British industry, and in some ways I still really do, in that it has produced some of the best filmmaking talent in the world. I mean, some of my favorite filmmakers are from the UK, and it has always had this incredible culture of being able to tell stories, and I wanted to be a part of that canon, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, even trying to make this film, you know, in what I considered to genuinely be a British film. You know, every single funding body who we went to said no. They basically said, yeah, this is really not what we're looking for. You know, despite so many of them saying how much they needed and wanted authentic British stories. It's like, this is it.
Yeah.
Or they would say, I'm sorry, we have something like this already. I'm like, you have a British Filipino story about immigrant life told through the lens of horror, do you? Or we would literally get, this doesn't quite sit comfortably with us.
No.
Yes, Ray. Yes. We even got a reply back a year after we finished the film. And
Right.
I won't name what company it was, but they basically said, hey, we read the script. We don't really think this is the type of films that we make, but we'd love to, see what else you have. We're like, mate, we've made the film already.
Incredible.
But yeah, when we won, I really hoped that this was going to sort of change
Yeah.
the way in which,
like South by Southwest is not. It's not by any means a small festival.
right?
It's a AAA festival. Like, I would have expected you to come back to this country with everyone wanting a piece of you.
Dude. No. I even tried to get I was in the place of transitioning to another, transitioning out of the agent I was with, and everyone I wrote to were like, no, I'd like to get a new agent. They were just like, yeah, sorry, like, we loved your film, thought it was amazing, but good luck. We think you're incredible, but you're just not for us. And I was like, what? And like, wrote to 5 agents, and they were all like, nah.
Wow.
And it killed me because, even when it came to publications, like, they never said who won this film, or it was a doubled up headline with something else, or they weren't calling me a British filmmaker, and it was dead silent with like UK press. Didn't give a shit. And it was interesting to see how they led with the winner's name at Sundance. They led with the winner's name at Venice or at Cannes, as like these amazing British filmmakers to look out for. But with my film and winning 2 prizes at South by Southwest, like, it was just crickets. Even when it came to trying to get a job within TV. So you can have, a number of shorts under your belt, written and directed a TV show abroad, win a AAA film festival, but still not be experienced enough to lead a TV show or do second block. I was just like, throughout the entire year, we just kept hitting these snags. No one wanted to buy the film. Not in the US, not in the UK. Every single distributor said no. Literally said no. And it was just really, really painful to sort of see the to see the industry sort of, I don't know, refuse it. But yeah, we knew between me and Chi, we kind of knew that this was a film that was going to be hard to celebrate. We were also told that because this wasn't a film that was paid for or supported by any of the British funding bodies, no one could claim it. So no one wanted to celebrate it. I was told by an exec that because no one can claim this film, there's no reason to celebrate your win because it shows what you can do outside of the British funding bodies and the British system. And that made sense. I don't know if that's true. And the thing that I've had to constantly remind myself is that, okay, fine, it hasn't had what I wanted, but that's not why I made the film. People are telling me, why it hasn't been celebrated in the way, but that's still conjecture, theory. No one has told me that. And although I was able to sort of reach this place where it was like a level of acceptance, I still found it really, really difficult because this is my own backyard. You know, watching films in the BFI, I grew up there, spending time there, you know, really wanting to feel like I belong to the British contingent of filmmakers. But I don't. My career is not here. That much I know. I do not belong here as a filmmaker because I can't even get a gig directing TV. So I'm trying to pivot my career towards the US. That's the only option I have.
That's enraging, honestly. Like, what would it take for you to get the recognition that you deserve? Like, would it take an Oscar?
All I know,
You know?
is that so many of us, people of color, East and Southeast Asians, women, people from the LGBTQ, you know, Muslims, being black, if you're any one of those, you do not have the privilege to arrive into this industry mediocre. Every single one of us.
In the UK.
Oh, especially in the UK. You have to come correct. You need to arrive excellent. You can't just be good. You need to be fucking good.
Yeah.
You can't be like Billy Joel and not Billy Joel the singer, just some random John Smith.
Yeah.
And be a mediocre director who gets to be mediocre and then gets good by virtue of just continuing to work. You have to somehow miraculously be amazing. And somehow, black directors, Asian directors, people of color, they somehow do. We're just held to a standard that is so fucking impossibly high. No wonder there is like a huge void of representation behind the camera, because we don't have the opportunity or the resources, the time, the money to be able to really hone our skills as storytellers. Even if you were a white man, being in this industry is hard anyway. And on top of that, all the other barriers that come on top of it, being a woman, being a person of color, being trans, being Muslim, being black, it is.
And wanting to tell stories about that diaspora.
I know. And then having to contend with, like British funders who have their own definition of what it is to be representative and diverse.
Yeah.
Who only want you to tell stories that come from a certain class or about suffering, poverty porn. It's shaped British cinema for the past 10 years. We've had Rye Lane, which is so brilliant and so celebratory, but why does that feel like a film that's never happened before?
Yeah.
Why have we never had that before? Like, it's insane. Why have we never had a Raging Grace? And I know I'm going on and on. I just got an enormous amount to say on this. Even with Chi Tai's brilliant study that she did on the amount of EC films that were made in the past 10 years. Can I have a guess? What the percentage of the 1,000 British films that were released over the 10 years, what percentage of that do you think was made by East or Southeast Asians?
I'd want to say more than 5%.
0.8%.
That is enraging.
That's nuts.
Yeah. Like,
I just don't feel like what does that say? That doesn't tell me like we're allowed to tell our stories. It tells me we're allowed to tell what they allow you to tell. It also feels like a very hostile industry to be in when you're an EC filmmaker.
Yeah.
So,
but I think I think you are simply just the pioneer in this, and that, I don't know, you can call me optimistic, and having not gone through the battle of trying to get a feature out there that covers such uniquely personal to us stories. But I still feel like there's hope in this country.
There is.
We are just probably quite a few years behind that, and you are just the first to do so. You, I like to think, have opened the door for people like me in the future, but that door's still very much wanting to be kept shut by the existing.
That's okay. I think,
So I don't know. Just listen to you speak just then. I wouldn't completely shut the door on the UK, but I also completely get if you wanted to go to America, where
I don't want to live there.
No,
I just know I have to go there.
The industry is a lot more welcoming.
Yeah.
Of just other stories.
I've been very fiery in this conversation, but I don't want people to walk away from this being like, well, how the fuck do I even do this?
Yeah.
You do it because you don't have any other choice but to tell your story. You do it because, like, not BBC, not Film 4, not Sky, not the BFI, not anybody is going to stop you from making a story that you need and want to tell. And I also don't want, say, for instance, like the BFI, to be solely responsible for shaping British talent. They are an aspect that, they are a slice of the, the opportunities. They are not the opportunity to make your film. And as much as I'm pissed at them, I don't want people to look at them as wholly useless. They are in a really tricky position with less money than they've ever had. They went from supporting 20 films to 8 films now, or 9 films. It's tough. I know it's hard. I just feel like we don't have the right people in power to really help make those differences.
Yeah.
But with, say, people like Chi and other producers like her, they have an inherent fire to try and make a change. And it is up to you as filmmakers who have something to say. There is a responsibility with you to write the stories that you want to see. That's it.
Yeah.
Pursue them responsibly. And when I say that, pursue them with care in mind of yourself. Like, protect your heart, protect your mind. This industry is so fucking hard. It is so hard. Put the same energy you put in your writing and in your craft into yourself. Like, you are so precious. Your talent and the stories you want to tell are deeply precious. Protect it. Protect your talent. Protect your own well-being, because the industry won't.
Yeah.
I know what I've talked about has been so difficult because it's so wrapped up in my own ambition and what I wanted from the industry to recognize. What I want to tell people is that do not give the responsibility of your fulfillment on an awards body, on a funding body. That fulfillment needs to come from you and what you do. And you have the ability, you have the fire, you have the talent to make this happen. No one's going to fucking stop you. No one.
100%.
And audiences are waiting for you to say hello. I can't wait for your stories to be seen on screen. And I will be there, day one, in the cinema, waving the flag for your film, for your short, for your feature, whatever it is. I believe in you. Like, I believe in you so much. Because if I can do it, like, you can. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It really won't be. But I know you can do this.
Wow. In contrast to the general British reaction to this film, both in terms of during pre-production and British audiences, what's the general consensus amongst the British Filipino, the British migrant audiences that have seen this film?
Thankfully, really wonderful. So wonderful. Like, anytime I was going through a shit part of the journey, seeing people's reaction to the film. I remember the first one I got was after the premiere at South by Southwest. There was a Filipino doctor that came up to me, was in tears, said I was adopted by an Irish Catholic family, wanted for nothing. They were incredibly loving, and I didn't ever feel like I needed to know my culture. Didn't need to think I needed to learn the language, because I just felt so loved. Nothing was missing in my life. But when I watched this film, it wasn't until I saw certain parts of my lived experience up there that I know I ever wanted to see myself there. I never knew I wanted to be represented until I saw this film. And I've had so many different variations of that, where parts of this film have really shaken people. It's hung a lantern on a part of their life that they felt they just had to bury within them. And I've even had like old white men come up to me crying, like shaking, not quite understanding what they've watched, but knowing that it's really affected them in a way. And I remember all of these people.
Do you think that's because potentially in the same way that I came out of the film feeling represented, maybe for them in a similar way, it's almost like you showed them a mirror of maybe parts of themselves, or at greater a mirror of the society around them. Perhaps you highlighted that to them.
I think there was certainly an element of that.
Yeah.
And trust me, there have been moments when holding up that mirror has not produced tears; it's produced vitriol. You know, even having an old white man in an audience confront me, asking me like, what did he say? He said something along the lines of like, how does it feel to have made something so self-serving and self-indulgent? I was like, bruh, what?
That's insane.
And I think about that sometimes, and I think, you know,
next time I watch James Bond, I'm going to say the same thing to the.
It is strange.
The nearest white person.
I mean, like, I asked him if you ever would you have asked Steven Spielberg the same question about, you know, his latest film, and comments like, "Oh, not another film about an immigrant." The kinds of comments where you think like, do you have these opinions, or do you say this about a rom-com or an action film or a fucking other police procedural, you know, or, you know, police and cops who are the most over fucking represented demographic in the world? Like, no, you don't. I just feel like people react to these things because they in that way, because they cannot see beyond their own lived experience.
Yeah.
But it's a film that's not for them. I just don't understand why they have to act so affronted by it.
Yeah.
And I do have to ask, like, what is it about a story that has an undocumented worker and their British-born daughter who are deeply oppressed, suffer at the hands of racism and exoticism, threatens you and your well-being? Like, ask yourself, what about that story makes you feel so threatened?
I just feel we're not there yet. As a society,
That's okay.
We're not there yet. But someone needed to open that door.
It's a heavy door to
Yeah.
push open, but
Like,
and it
I'm-
can't just be me.
Yeah.
I can. Do you know what? If this is the first and last film that I made it with the intention of saying everything I needed to say. And I implore everybody else to make the film where it is what you want to say without any self-censorship.
Mm-hmm.
But if this is the last film I make, I really fucking hope that this is a film that makes it far easier for people like yourself and the up and coming generation to make a film that feels true and authentic to them. You know, and where you don't have to go through the enormity of self-promoting the film because your distributor only spends £100 on advertising, or where you have to draw your own poster, or come up, or make all your graphics, you know, for all the Q&As, you know, or record all your own Q&As to give to awards bodies, or to come up with your own questionnaire, you know, or to hire your own publicist. I think we really need to redefine what it is to be an independent filmmaker, because until you spent £15,000 of your own money to try and promote a film that is refusing to be seen and to hire a publicist to do that, then, you know, and I don't want that for other people. I really don't. But that's the level that we've had to go to try and get this film seen. And I'm really hoping that it doesn't have to be this way for the next generation.
Well, I think just your story alone, what we spoke about today, is enough to invoke that same spark in people and show people that it is possible. The fact that you have a finished product that's so profound and powerful. Yeah, I think you've done more than just pave a way for people like me and other filmmakers. I think in what you've been able to achieve, just being able to make this film, being able to get eyes on it from filmmakers like me, the next generation, people from the diaspora, just seeing someone be able to achieve that and have a finished product, I think it sparked a lot of, I feel very motivated. You know, just knowing that it is possible to have a finished product.
It is 100% possible.
So that's why I say I really think you've done a lot more than just pave the way or open the door. You, I think, will be the source of that spark of fire for a lot of people.
Really?
I'll hold you to it.
100%. We need community. We really, really need it. You know, I feel like our EC community is quite fractured. I still feel like people don't quite take Filipinos seriously. I also feel like there's a large Chinese dominance that erases, or I kind of feel like it I'm going to be very real for a moment. There is still an enormous amount of racism towards Filipinos in the Asian community, where some even refuse to see us as Asian.
Yeah.
And I also feel like they feel like we're bottom rung Asian.
I agree.
You know, when it comes to so much. But my point is that we need to strengthen our community. Really, really do, because it's been community that has pushed this film out to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want this to be divisive. A lot of Asians came to see this. It's just, I know that there are prejudices still there that has, you know, really blocked from people the community that I would want to get behind the film from supporting it. But the love has been intense, bro. It has been so intense by the community. I'm so grateful for it. And you know, yeah, I hope I have the chance and the privilege to be able to make another one. We'll see.
I hope you do.
Yeah, man. Fingers crossed.
Wow. Well, Paris, thank you.
My pleasure.
Not just for this interview, but for letting me into your space, but also making an incredible film, which has sparked a fire in me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Come.